So many of you know the dreadful condition, laminitis. Luckily, veterinary treatment is advancing all of the time, and in particular diagnosis of the conditions that may lead to an increased risk in laminitis. But the hospital care can be quite extensive. Horses are on box rest for a very long time. It's an important part of ensuring they don't deteriorate. And there's lots you can do to help them during that time. Now, when they're on long-term box rest, but with laminitis, you can't take them out and about for walks to make their days more exciting. So what you can do is enrichment in many other ways. Our nursing team and our farm teams here are absolutely brilliant at homemade ways of doing enrichment. And I've got an example here. It's just an old lead rope, and we've stuffed various slices of apple and a little bit of parsnip there and some grass through. Now, it's all about doing it in moderation, because when a horse has got laminitis, you're trying to be very careful with the amount of sugars that you're feeding. But as you can see, there's actually a very small amount of apple in there and a very small amount of grass, so it's all relative. So if you do this just a couple of times a day, you're not heavily going to add to the load of sugars in the overall diet. Other things you can do is, if you have children in particular, you'll know how quickly they grow out of their wellies and you have to buy more. So use the old wellies, obviously remove the child first, put some slots in and put a little bit of forage in there. It's only a small amount of forage and you've made it harder for the horse to get at it. So it will act as a very slow trickle feeder. So these are really good ways to keep a horse entertained, because not only are they on box rest for a long time, but you've probably got them on a reduced overall ration. So spread that ration out as best as you can throughout the day. So if you've been talking to your vet and they've prescribed a set amount of feeding, look at ways you can divide that feed down into as many small offerings per day. So you're almost mimicking trickle feeding, and try and keep that horse as entertained as you can while they're remaining on their box rest. But other good ideas, many horses, particularly laminitis, will often affect the front feet of the horse more than the back, not in all cases, but with those front feet being very sore, the horse will be reluctant to lower their head to the floor until they feel completely better. So you can do things like raise up the feeders using just old tyres. They're absolutely marvellous. Stack them up and then your buckets will sit in the top. So you can raise up the water if you need to, any of the feeds and the forage, or just a nice, cheap and cheerful over the door manger. And it just means the horse hasn't got to lower its head as far to get to the food, and that's going to be great if they've got sore front feet. And then very often your vet will advise you provide some kind of nice solar support for the feet. Now, this may come in the form of specialist shoes, or it may be your vet advises a nice deep bed. And you can use various things to help support those soles. Some people like to use sand in the stable because that compresses nicely into the feet. We use a compost towards the front of the stable. It forms a lovely moist area that packs into the feet, and the horses find it really supportive. Do bear in mind, whatever you use, you need to bed right up to the box stall. We're all great fans of these lovely neat beds where we've brushed them into a neat square at the back. But where does your horse stand all day? They're going to stand at the front of the stable, looking out, seeing what their friends are doing, seeing what you're doing. So that bedding needs to go right up to the door. And yes, your stable yard will look messy, but it's worth it. So we tend to use either a deep shavings bed or a compost bed towards the front of the stable. But we find our horses don't like to lie down on the compost. They find it rather chilly. So we always have shavings on top right to the back. And again, deep banks, because if they're spending a lot of time lying down because their feet are sore, they can easily get themselves cast. We do also have cameras in the stables because we find them really useful to better assess how much pain and discomfort a horse is in, because we can dial in and look at those at any time. Now, we've got professional cameras in our stables, but you can buy some very inexpensive products online that you can dial in and check on your horse just from your phone. And I would really recommend those if you have a horse on long-term box rest, or for older horses in general. I think it really gives a good 24-hour picture of their health.